In the hushed, sterile world of a private hospital wing, where time is measured in doses and hope is a carefully guarded emotion, a princess fights a battle known only to her family. Beyond the guarded gates, the world speculates, but inside, the truest warriors are a worried husband and two children who just want their mother back. This is not a fairy tale, but a raw, intimate portrait of a family clinging to normalcy in an extraordinary circumstance. It's the story of a father's desperate mission to mend his wife's spirit, not with grand gestures, but with the whispered chaos and pure, unfiltered love of their children. Prepare to witness a private reunion so tender, so human, it will redefine what strength truly looks like. William stood by the window of his study, the morning light doing little to lift the heavy fog that had settled in his chest. The room, usually a place of orderly calm, felt like a hollow echo chamber for his worry. Reports were stacked neatly, a pen lay untouched, and the silence was absolute, broken only by the distant, cheerful shouts of George and Charlotte playing in the garden below. That sound, their normal, beautiful noise, was now a piercing reminder of what was missing. It had been weeks of cryptic bulletins, of putting on a brave face for the public, of sleeping in an empty bed that felt too vast and cold. Catherine was making progress, the doctor said, but the kind of progress measured in quiet conversations and regained strength, not in leaps and bounds. Her spirit, he knew, was a real patient. He could hear it in the tired but ever-polite tone of her voice during their brief phone calls, the way she always asked about the children's homework, their lunches, their little triumphs, deflecting any inquiry about her own pain. He needed a plan, not a state plan, not a strategic royal maneuver, but a husband's plan. The idea had come to him in the dead of night, a clear, sharp thought cutting through the haze of anxiety. He would bring the children to see her, not for a formal, stiff visit, but for a real one. He knew the risks, the potential for overwhelming her, the logistical ballet it would require to keep it private. But he also knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that the medicine she needed most couldn't be found in any vial or pill. It was in George's serious, thoughtful questions and Charlotte's boundless, giggling energy. He had broached the subject with the medical team, his tone leaving no room for debate, yet layered with a silent plea for their cooperation. After a careful consultation, they had agreed, a short, controlled visit the afternoon of the next day. The challenge now was preparing the children. He walked down to the sunlit garden, where his son was meticulously examining a beetle and his daughter was orchestrating an elaborate tea party for her stuffed animals. They looked up, their faces so like hers. "Daddy!" Charlotte cried, running over. He knelt, gathering them close, the scent of grass and childhood on their clothes. "I have something very important to talk to you about," he began, his voice softer than usual. "It's about Mummy." George's eyes, so old for his years, immediately fixed on his father's face, a flicker of fear in them. Charlotte's smile faded. "She's in the hospital, so the doctors can help her get very strong again," William explained, choosing each word with care. "But she misses you both terribly, more than anything. So tomorrow, we're going on a special adventure. A secret mission." He saw the spark ignite in Charlotte's eyes. George remained cautious. "What kind of mission?" he asked. "A mission to make Mummy smile," William said, his own heart clenching at the simplicity of the goal. "We're going to go see her. But it's a hospital, so we have to be very quiet and gentle. And it's our secret, okay? Our family's secret." The concept of a secret mission transformed the unknown from something frightening into something purposeful. William spent the next hours gently coaching them. He explained that Mummy might look a bit different, might be in a big bed, and that she would get tired very quickly. "Our job," he told Charlotte, who was practicing walking on tiptoe, "is to be calm little mice who bring her love." For George, he framed it differently. "I need your help, George. You're the eldest. I need you to be brave and lead the way." The boy straightened his shoulders, a visible weight of responsibility settling on him. But it was a weight he seemed to welcome. That evening, under William's supervision, they became artists and curators. At the kitchen table, surrounded by crayons, glitter, and glue, they created get-well cards. George's was a detailed drawing of their dog, Orla, with a speech bubble that read, "Woof, get well soon, Mummy." Charlotte's was a vibrant explosion of hearts and flowers, with a large, wobbly, "I love you" written across the top. They also assembled a happy box, as Charlotte named it, into a small decorative cardboard box when a smooth stone George had found on a beach holiday, a hair ribbon in Catherine's favorite shade of blue, a recent school photo of them both, and a packet of her preferred peppermint tea. Each item was selected with intense deliberation, a tangible piece of their world to leave with her. As William tucked them into bed that night, the usual bedtime stories were replaced by whispered plans. "Will I be able to hug her?" Charlotte asked, her voice small in the dim room. "Very, very gently," William promised, smoothing her hair. "She might look a bit sleepy, but your hug will be the best medicine in the whole world." George was silent for a long moment. "Is she very sick, Papa?" The question, direct and fearful, hung in the air. William took his son's hand. "She has been, yes, but she is getting better every single day, and seeing you will help her get better even faster." He saw the boy process this, his logical mind seeking reassurance in the equation. "Our visit equals Mummy getting better." Satisfied, George nodded and closed his eyes. William retreated to his room, the silence returning, but now it was a silence filled with purpose. He laid out their clothes for the next day, neat, comfortable, perfect for a secret mission. He checked and rechecked the arrangements with his security team, a well-rehearsed choreography of discreet vehicles and private entrances. Sleep was slow to come. His mind raced with 1,000 scenarios, but beneath the worry was a current of hope, fragile but undeniable. This was the right thing. It had to be. The day of the visit dawned gray and drizzly, the weather mirroring William's internal tension. At breakfast, the children were unusually quiet, a mixture of excitement and nervousness rendering them still. Charlotte ate her cereal with uncharacteristic neatness, while George kept checking the time. William moved through the morning with a calm demeanor he did not entirely feel, a performance of normalcy for their sake. "Remember our mission parameters," he said lightly as they got into the car. Its nondescript appearance, a key part of the plan. Quiet voices, gentle movements, and lots of love. The drive was a silent one, the children gazing out at the rain-streaked windows, the world passing by in a blur of gray and green. William's mind was a checklist of security protocols, medical precautions, and emotional landmines. He reached the private entrance, a door that looked like any other service entrance, where a trusted member of Catherine's medical team was waiting. She gave William a brief, professional nod and a kind smile for the children. "Your mother is very much looking forward to this," she said to them, her voice warm. "She's been waiting all morning." They entered a private lift, then walked down a quiet, carpeted corridor. The air smelled clean, of antiseptic and filtered air, a smell that set William's teeth on edge. He held Charlotte's hand tightly. George walked close to his side, his eyes wide, taking in the strange, hushed world. Outside her room, William knelt one last time. "Ready, team?" he whispered. Two small, solemn nods answered him. He pushed the door open gently. The room was spacious, filled with soft light from a lamp, the curtains drawn against the gloomy day. And there, propped up on pillows, was Catherine. She looked thinner, paler, the lines of fatigue etched gently around her eyes, but her hair was brushed, and she wore a soft, familiar cashmere wrap. Her face, the moment she saw them, transformed. It was as if someone had lit a candle from within. A light of pure, unadulterated joy pushed back the shadows of illness. "My darlings," she breathed, the words barely a whisper but filling the entire room. For a second, everyone froze, a tableau of overwhelming emotion. Then, with a small, choked sound, Charlotte broke free from William's hand. "Mummy!" she cried, but Remembering her training, she didn't run. She hurried to the bedside, her little arms reaching up. Catherine leaned down, wincing almost imperceptibly, and wrapped her daughter in a careful, trembling embrace, burying her face in Charlotte's sweet-smelling hair. William guided George forward. The boy approached with more restraint, but his bottom lip quivered. "Hello, Mummy," he said, his voice formal but cracking. Catherine released Charlotte and opened her arm to him. "My big boy," she said, and he leaned into her, his head resting carefully on her shoulder, his body shaking with a single, suppressed sob. William stood by the door, his own vision blurring, his throat tight. This was the image he had carried in his heart for weeks. His family, whole again, in one room. The fear, the distance, melted away in the simple, profound act of touch. Catherine looked over George's head at William, her eyes swimming with tears, but they were tears of gratitude. In that silent look, 1,000 words were exchanged. "Thank you. I've missed them so much. This is everything." After a long moment, the children remembered their duties. Charlotte stepped back, suddenly shy. "We brought you things," she announced. George, regaining his composure, presented the happy box. Catherine took it, as if it were made of the finest porcelain. She opened the lid, and as she lifted each item, the stone, the ribbon, the photo, she listened with rapt attention as they explained their significance. "This is from Scotland, remember? It's very smooth," George said. "And this is for your hair when you come home," Charlotte added, touching the ribbon. Catherine held each object, her fingers tracing them, absorbing the love embedded in every choice. Then came the cards. She read them slowly, her smile growing with each word. "Orla says woof, does she?" She laughed, a real, light sound that was the most beautiful music William had heard in months. "And these hearts, Lottie, are the most beautiful hearts I have ever seen." She placed the cards on her bedside table, positioning them just so, declaring them the room's most important artwork. The initial intensity of the reunion softened into a gentler rhythm. William pulled 2 chairs close to the bed for the children. Charlotte, ever the entertainer, began to chatter, telling her mother about her writing lesson, a funny thing that had happened at school, the new puzzle they were doing. George, encouraged by his mother's focused attention, spoke about a history project he was starting about the Romans. Catherine listened, her gaze never leaving their faces, drinking them in. She asked questions, her voice still weak, but full of genuine interest. William mostly watched, interjecting here and there, his hand resting on Catherine's foot over the blanket, a constant, gentle point of contact. He saw the color slowly returning to her cheeks, not from any medicine, but from a sheer vitality of her children's presence. He thought, this is life. This messy, beautiful, noisy love. This is what she has been fighting for. The afternoon light in the hospital room softened, turning a deep gold as it filtered through the gaps in the curtains. A comfortable quiet had settled, a stark contrast to the emotional torrent of the arrival. Charlotte, having expended the initial burst of narrative energy, now leaned contentedly against her mother's side, one small hand patting Catherine's arm in a rhythm only she understood. George, his initial reserve fully melted, was showing his mother a game on a tablet, explaining the rules with serious precision. Catherine's attention never wavered, her responses slightly slower, but her engagement absolute. William watched, a deep sense of peace seeping into bones that had been tense for weeks. He saw the moment, however, when a faint veil of weariness passed over Catherine's eyes. It was subtle, a slight drooping of her lids, a deeper breath. The children, absorbed in their world with her, didn't notice, but he did. It was time for the next phase of their mission, distraction and lightness. "Who fancies a bit of show?" William asked, his voice breaking the quiet gently. 2 heads swiveled towards him. "I happen to know," he continued, a playful glint in his eye, "that a certain princess in this room has been practicing a rather spectacular ballet routine. And I believe a certain future king is a whiz at animal impressions." Catherine's eyes sparkled with amused anticipation. Charlotte needed no further encouragement. She scrambled off the bed, careful not to jostle her mother. "It's the dance from the recital, Mummy. You missed it, but I remember all of it." She struck a starting pose, her face a picture of concentration. With no music but the hum of the hospital, Charlotte began to dance. It was a series of twirls, skips, and carefully positioned arms, delivered with earnest grace and the occasional giggle when she wobbled. The room, once a clinical space, was now a stage. Catherine watched, her hand pressed to her heart, every spin and leap a testament to the vibrant, healthy childhood continuing outside these walls. She applauded softly at the finale, a grand curtsy. "Absolutely exquisite, my darling. You become a proper ballerina." Beaming, Charlotte took a theatrical bow. Then it was George's turn. He looked at his father, slightly embarrassed, but William gave him an encouraging nod. "Go on. The lion was always her favorite." George took a breath, puffed out his chest, and let out a growl. It was a surprisingly convincing sound, deep and rumbling for a boy his size. It dissolved into laughter, which broke the last of the formal ice. He followed with a monkey scratching his sides and chattering, and a rather accurate impression of a braying donkey that sent Charlotte into hysterics. Catherine laughed, a free, uninhibited sound that seemed to startle even her. It was the sound of joy, pure and simple, cutting through the sickness. William caught her eye, and they shared a look of pure, unadulterated happiness. This was the noise of their family, the beautiful chaos she had been missing. The performance segment transitioned into a quiet ritual. William had brought a book from home, a well-worn collection of fairy tales they had read together countless times. He pulled his chair closer, and the children nestled in, Charlotte back on the bed within the circle of Catherine's arm, George leaning against William's knee. William opened the book and began to read. His voice, steady and warm, filled the room. It wasn't just the story. It was the familiar rhythm, the known cadence of their father's storytelling, the safe, predictable pattern of a beginning, a middle, and a happy ending. Catherine's fingers gently stroked Charlotte's hair. Her head leaned back against the pillows, her eyes closed, but she wasn't sleeping. She was basking, soaking in the sensory reality of her family, the weight of her daughter, the sound of her husband's voice, the solid presence of her son. This was a different kind of medicine, a balm for the lonely hours and the fear. She was not a patient here in this moment. She was a mother, a wife, at the very center of her universe. William read to the end of the story, his own heart full to bursting. He looked at his wife's face, serene in the lamplight, and saw not just the woman he loved, but the fighter, the survivor, being fortified by the very thing she was fighting for. The visit was approaching its natural end. The children were growing calm, the energy of the day settling into a contented glow. But there was one more thing. William nodded at George. The boy slipped off his chair and went to his backpack. He pulled out a small, flat, gift-wrap package. "We have one more thing, Mummy," he said, presenting it to her. It was a simple, polished silver picture frame, and inside it was not a professional portrait, but a photograph William had taken on his phone weeks before her hospitalization. It was a candid shot of all four of them, tangled together on a sofa at Amber Hall, mid-laughter, a blur of cozy jumpers and happy, indistinct faces. It was not a perfect picture, but it was a perfect memory. Catherine took the frame, her fingers tracing the edges. She looked at the frozen moment of pure, unguarded family happiness. "This," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "is the most wonderful gift. I will put it right here, where I can always see it." She placed it on the bedside table, next to the handmade cards, creating a shrine of love and normalcy. It was, William knew, a promise of the life that was waiting for her just beyond these walls. A life of sofa cuddles and silly laughter, a life they would return to together. The grandfather clock in the corridor outside, a relic in the modern hospital, chimed softly, marking the passage of an hour. The sound was a gentle, irrevocable reminder that their secret paradise had a border. William felt it first, a tug of duty against the fierce desire to let this afternoon stretch into eternity. He saw Catherine fight back a yawn, the brave facade of energy beginning to thin at the edges. The children, softened by the story and the closeness, were now quiet, Charlotte's thumb drifting near her mouth, a habit she'd outgrown, but that resurfaced in moments of sleepy contentment. George was tracing a pattern on the bed cover, his mind seemingly far away. It was time. The leaving would be almost as delicate as the arrival. William didn't speak of it directly. Instead, he began the ritual of packing up, moving slowly, letting the action itself signal the transition. He carefully placed the book back in his bag. He gathered the discarded wrapping paper from the picture frame into a neat ball. Catherine watched him, her eyes growing momentarily sad, then resolute. She understood. Her arms tightened briefly around Charlotte. "My wonderful, wonderful girl," she whispered, kissing the top of her head. "You have given me the best afternoon in the world." She then turned to George, who had looked up. "And my brave, clever boy, thank you for looking after everyone." George nodded, his chin dimpling with the effort to control his emotions. "We have to go now, my loves," William said, his voice a low, warm murmur. "Mummy needs a rest so she can get strong and come home to us." There were no protests. The mission parameters, established with such care, held. They understood their part. Charlotte slipped off the bed and stood quietly, her eyes large. George got up and went to his father's side. William approached the bed. He leaned down and kissed Catherine, a long, tender kiss that spoke of love, of patience, of a future just within reach. "You were perfect," he whispered against her lips. "They were perfect. You rest now." She nodded, her hand coming up to cup his cheek for a fleeting second, a gesture of infinite gratitude. Then she mustered a bright, brave smile for the children. "Now, I want big hugs, but remember, gentle as butterflies," she said, her voice playful though her eyes glistened. Charlotte went first, carefully putting her arms around her mother's neck, pressing her cheeks softly against Catherine's. "I love you, Mummy. Get better soon. I will, my treasure. I promise." George's hug was a sturdy, careful lean, his head tucked next to hers. "We'll come back," he said, the words a solemn vow. "I know you will," she replied. "Be good for Papa." They moved towards the door, a small procession. William had a hand on each small shoulder. At the doorway, they all turned for one last look. Catherine was framed by the lamplight, the cards, and the new picture frame shining beside her. She waved, her smile unwavering. "Bye-bye, my darlings," she called softly. They waved back, two small hands and one large one. Then William guided them out, the door closing with a soft, definitive click. The corridor felt cooler, quieter, the spell broken. The walk back to the car was silent, but it was a different silence from a morning's nervous tension. This was a silence of fullness, of a mission accomplished. In the back seat, Charlotte finally asked the question that had likely been brewing. "Is Mummy going to be okay now, Daddy?" William met her gaze in the rearview mirror. "Seeing you too," he said with utter conviction, "has given her more strength than any medicine ever could. Yes, she's going to be okay." George was looking out the window, but he was smiling a small, private smile. William drove home. The rain had stopped, and a narrow band of golden evening light broke through the clouds. At home, the routine took over. Shoes off, washing up, a simple supper. The children were exhausted, emotionally spent. Baths were quiet affairs, pajamas were put on. When William went to tuck Charlotte in, he found her already half asleep. "We made her smile, Daddy," she murmured. "We did our mission." "You did it brilliantly," he whispered, kissing her forehead. In George's room, the boy was already under his covers, the picture of the Beetle book on his nightstand. "Thank you for taking us, Papa," he said, his voice heavy with sleep. "It was important. It was the most important thing I've ever done," William replied, and he meant it. Downstairs, in the quiet of his study, William finally allowed himself to truly feel the weight of the day. The worry was still there, a familiar companion, but It was now edged with a powerful, buoyant hope. He replayed the image of Catherine's face when she first saw the children, the sound of her laugh during George's impressions, the serene peace as she listened to the story. He picked up his phone and sent a single text to her private number. "They're asleep, full of you. You are magnificent. We love you endlessly. Vu." The reply came a few minutes later, a simple heart emoji, followed by, "I feel stronger than I have in weeks. My heroes, I love you." See, he held the phone, a tangible connection to her in the empty house. The visit hadn't changed the medical reality. There were still steps to take, recovery to navigate. But it had changed everything else. It had reaffirmed their North Star, their reason for every hard fight. It had mended a thread in their family tapestry that distance and illness had strained. William looked out at the night, where a single star shone clearly in a break in the clouds. For the first time in a long time, he felt not just like a protector, but like a healer. And he knew, with a father's and a husband's intuition, that the most powerful healing of all had just begun in a quiet hospital room, delivered by the small, gentle hands of their children.